parks and our heritage centers. So some of that money goes towards maintenance.
I'm talking about that.
No, I know what you're talking about. I just wanted to start there. Most of that money goes to counties. So we don't really see, it's not really in the budget. So I can't give you that answer.
The reason why I was asking is that if we knew, and I'm sure those numbers are available somewhere, if you're talking about the sales tax, you're talking about some of the other taxes that our governor, has anybody given any thought to eliminating sales taxes and paying a higher user tax whereby everybody that walks around pays? Because there's a lot of people that pay a minuscule amount of real estate tax, live in apartments. The owner of the apartment, he negotiates with the county about a much lower rate than anybody that lives in an individual house. People that don't have any children in school anymore.
With any tax shift, there'll always be winners and losers. So there is a proposal to eliminate school property taxes. To do that, you would need about $11 billion. Now, $11 billion, it's a lot of money. You're looking at, on a state income tax to get there, this is the opposite of what you're saying.
Well, that's why I was asking how much.
Oh, I understand. With about a 1/10 of 1% state income tax increase of PIT, you raise about $500 million. So there are different ways to do it. Let me show you some of the items that are being taxed, and some of you have been at budget meetings before you've seen them, but we'll go through them quickly. These are some of the new items. And yes, we're highlighting things that are very controversial, like, college textbooks, nursing home, and like basically the proposal is to put a sales tax on everything but food, clothing, and prescriptions. So, for instance, I just took my kid to college. His college meal plan and his college room and board and his textbooks would be subject to a sales tax. And I can show you what that actually costs Pennsylvanians in a minute. So, keep going. Okay, this is what we call the dirty dozen. Why do we call it the dirty dozen? The 12 single highest sources of revenue from an expanded sales tax are basic cable. So it would cost you $260 million more for Pennsylvanians to watch TV. Amusement and recreation services. I just got back from South Carolina. They tax, when I went out to play golf, they tax that. When you go to an amusement, they tax that. Now, I don't know how South Carolina does that, whether it's statewide. My suspicion is that it's done county by county. And so if you're in a tourism area, maybe you don't care because you figure the tourists like me are paying that sales tax. Well, it's not that big a deal if it's going to your local schools and reducing something. But I can tell you how annoyed I was after you're out with a family and, oh, here it is again. I'm going to take a tour and there's a $6, what's this, $6 for a sales tax? Social assistance, including daycare. That would be your community food and housing, emergency relief, vocation, individual care services, real estate brokers, $195 million, hair, nail, skin care, $157 million, nursing and residential. You're going to put your loved one in a nursing home and you're going to get a sales tax. Average cost of a nursing home is probably $5,000 to $8,000. So put 6.6% on that. Legal services, non-prescription drugs, $151 million. Just college dorm and tuitions, $120 million. So let's go back to this argument about the budget impasse. So if I didn't vote to override the veto, does that mean I'm prepared to vote for those? And if so, how come I didn't vote for them the first time? I'm telling you, there's not 30 votes in the whole House for that kind of proposal. And so what are we doing the impasse for? What is it we're trying to change? Why wouldn't, and I will tell you, the governor thinks, and has stated many times, I have a mandate, I won. So what is his mandate? Was it to tax college dorm rooms? I never heard that in the campaign. I never heard him say he was going to add to college education costs. He doesn't have a mandate for that. I know that. You know that. He may have a mandate for severance tax for education. Guess how much of his severance tax goes towards education? You've read it. It must be true, right?
Zero.
Zero. Absolutely zero. It goes for solar grants, wind grants, and environmental programs. All important, but not a penny for education. Keep going. Okay, you can get a full list. Keep going. Okay. We talked about the House vote, so we'll pass this, that, there was a chance to vote for the taxes, and it failed. Okay. So, let's look at what the legislature passed and how it's spent. I'm not going to go through tremendous detail, but what you'll see in the notes is that without a tax increase, we were able to fund 350 more troopers to go to school and become full-time troopers. We put a 10% increase on veterans' homes, $100 million to basic ed, 25 to prepaid accounts, $5 million to Head Start, $20 million to special ed, $10 million to the EITC tax credit, which is overprescribed. That's where school districts get money, companies donate, they get a tax credit, and the school can spend that money on additional programs. We put in $5 billion for PlanCon. PlanCon is school improvement program through bonds. We put the full retirement payment in at $1.7 billion. If you go to Westchester, a 3% increase. State-related is 3%. Community colleges, 6.4% million. Higher education, 6% increase. And then we take 3,700 seniors and provide home and community services, long-term care for them, seniors, disabilities, 13, 16, and 10 care, domestic and rape violence, 2.4 million more, and drug and alcohol, 6.5. It was almost amazing that they were able to come up with those kind of numbers for increase without a tax increase. Okay?
You mentioned that businesses get a tax credit.
Yeah, what happens on the EITC, a business donates money into this program, and it's always oversubscribed. In other words, there's not enough of the tax credit. We have a cap on it, so it can't be unlimited. And they can donate either to a private school or to a public school. The public school, for instance, Council Rock, and I'm sure New Hope Solbury. Does New Hope Solbury have a program? Oh, well, they should. Okay. Basically, what happens in the case of Council Rock, they have a foundation, and the foundation then can offer additional classes, and they use that tax credit money so that they can enrich the curriculum. And so the company donates, they get a tax credit, and then the institution gets cash. Some of the schools use it for scholarships for students who couldn't afford to go. Most of the public schools use it for additional classes. Some of them may be considered hokey by some people, but somebody comes up with an idea.
It's not a dollar. It's not a dollar for dollar donation. It's a tax rate donation.
How much is the tax credit that they're allowed?
Last year, I thought it was around the total package of 70 million, something like that. So once it's
they
subscribed,
donate 77 million, then they
Yeah.
reduce their taxable income by 77 million.
yeah, it's a
And they do that on the federal return too.
probably.
They don't get the credit on the federal return,
Right.
but they get a tax reduction.
Yep. It's a very popular program,
Sure.
and and they usually hit up their employees, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, so let's switch gears and talk a little bit about severance tax. It's an important concept. Before we even start, I'll tell you I have my own severance tax bill. And I'll give you my perspective on it. I'm not saying this is gospel or like, but we have a political issue. And here's how I think the political issue arose. It started when Attorney General Corbett ran for governor. One of the first things he did was take a no tax pledge with a group called Americans for Prosperity. And what that means to them is if you raise a dog license fee, that would be considered a tax. Anything is a tax. So along came the severance issue, and he really didn't want to tax the industry at all. His feet were in the ground. He felt like this was an emerging enterprise that was going to employ a lot of people. He didn't want to put a tax on it. Legislature overwhelmingly wanted to put a tax up, and it had a bill come across the table, probably would have been a pretty strong rate. Of course, the cost to do business in Pennsylvania, at least in the gas industry, is higher than most other states. The reason is we have mountains. Texas doesn't. The gas is in rural communities. It's difficult to get there. You have to transport a lot of water to frack these wells. And the gas is, for good or bad, in communities that have been poor for a long time without industry. Most of them have hollowed out. They don't have as many students as they used to. People don't stay there. They leave because there's no work. And so if you're in Washington County, I went to school in Washington County. When I went to college in the 80s, the steel industry's closed. I actually had fraternity brothers whose parents never worked a day. Not that they didn't want to. There were no jobs for the 4 years their kids were in school. And they still somehow send them to college. I mean, it's amazing when you see what we dealt with. So now you have these gas companies coming along to people's constituents offering royalties. These are big dollars for people. A $15,000 signing bonus for someone who eats dirt, every day. That's a big hunk of money, along with promises of more money. And so they signed up. And they didn't want to tax. And the reps that cover those areas, they didn't want to tax. One of my reps in our caucus stood up one day and said, we shouldn't tax this industry. And if we do, it should be a low tax. And I should keep it all because it's my asset. And I stood up and I have the chart of all the taxes that are raised county by county. I said, well, you make a point, it's your asset, and you raise in the two counties you represent about 0.5% of all the state's revenue. So you keep yours and we'll keep ours. By the way, Bucks County will have $800 million more. We'll have no property tax. We'll keep all our money and we'll just give out the $800 million like it's candy to our constituents. How's that work for you? I mean, it's being sarcastic, but the truth is, we're a Commonwealth. So for a Commonwealth, we should share. So that's how it started. I think Corbett was wrong in agreeing to an impact fee. Why do I say that? If you're a drilling company and the price is high, the impact fee is a constant. It doesn't grow. It doesn't shift with the market. So right now, the price of gas is low. It's about a 9% effective rate. So if you look at the other states, that's a high rate. And they have to pay before they sell the product. I think this severance tax, which fluctuates based upon market price and volume, is better. It's fair to the company, and it's certainly fair to us, so that when the price returns, we would have more revenue. So that's kind of where we are. Now, how do we unfold this? The law says that if we put in a severance tax, the impact fee goes away. So you have two choices. You either put a severance tax on top of the impact fee, or you do away with the impact fee. I say the latter is the better way to go. But if you're one of those communities that's getting the money, 50% is going directly to the communities, and then 50% gets spread out among the Commonwealth. And it goes by population. So being one of the larger counties, we get, out of the 50%, we get a larger share of that than, say, if you're in Lancaster or somewhere else that doesn't have drilling. So in order to get it done politically, we're going to have to agree to the same formula of distribution in order to try and get it done. And that's essentially what my bill does. The next slides are to show you exactly what the governor's proposal is. So the tax is going into effect January 1st. It was originally 5% plus a 4.7 cents at the wellhead, and there was originally a 2.97 floor. He said he's eliminated that from his proposal, so in other words, it could never go below a certain number. And he was going to borrow $675 million for economic development. And there are the projected revenues. What we're showing is, based upon actual market price, how the revenue numbers are off. That's a little bit off, that's a lot off. So if you're balancing your budget, assuming you're going to get $1 billion, and you only get 113 million, we're in trouble. Keep going. This is, our appropriations chairman is from Delaware County, and he's an accountant by trade. And what he's just saying is, in this slide, that it's shocking that the governor's office would use numbers that, even based upon current market price, don't hold up. So, keep going. And then he says the following chart shows what the actual revenue will be. So there's the bottom line is, whether you want to believe that we laid off, and the appropriation staff, by the way, we have the best appropriation staff you can imagine. Our guy that does revenue has never been, since I've been in office, off by more than $100,000, let alone billions. He's just right on. The rest of this, Nathan Benfeld is an economist with Commonwealth Foundation. Now, full disclosure, they come from a business-friendly perspective. So you can't take everything as gospel, but he's basically trying to tell you that 11 states collected $200 million, Pennsylvania would be 12, and that these are the taxes that the other places don't have. Okay, keep going. And then this shows in the bar chart the tax collection. I'm not going to go into detail. You can see it later. Obviously, Texas is the biggest producer by far. Okay, keep going. We won't go into detail. What Bienenfeld does when you take this home, you'll see in his article, he talks about companies that have recently laid off Pennsylvanians, and then they do a comparison of every state and what they collect. Okay? I don't want to bore you to death. Let's keep going. We use this one to death. So there are my bill and estimated revenues. So you can see they're not $1 billion because it's a 5% fee, but those are the revenue numbers. Okay, keep going. Now let's talk about pensions. Pensions are on everybody's mind. So there are essentially 3 plans this year. Start with last year. Last year there was a guy who had a hybrid plan. The way that would work is a state worker or a teacher would have a pension on the first $50,000, and after that it would be some sort of cash plan. So the first $50,000 of your salary would be a pension, the rest is a cash plan. The proposal this year, let's start with the governor. The governor has proposed he'll borrow $3 billion. He puts it into the state teachers fund, or the PSEA fund. He doesn't put it in the state workers fund. And he gets more revenue from the liquor stores by modernizing them. And he uses the modernization to pay the cost of the bond. So the first issue I have with the plan is it appropriate to take what is a state asset, a liquor store, and financially leverage it for teachers and teacher aides for schools? How do you do that? I don't think you can. He seeks to eliminate something called the charter school double dip. It's a reimbursement to charter schools that he has a point that isn't correct. We have to fix a formula issue. There's a lot of controversy over that because if you like charter schools, then you want to keep giving them the money. If you think charter schools are okay, like I do, I think they have a place. But they aren't a panacea, and we don't have many charter schools in Bucks County because we're succeeding. But if I was in Philadelphia and my kid could go to a charter school and be safe, I'd rather that than the public school system.
You get an education too.
Well, it goes back to the argument. Here's really the argument. If you believe that certain school districts are failing, do you save everyone or do you save those that you can? Well, you know, all of us say you should save everybody if you can. It's human nature. You know, the Titanic's going down. How many people do you want to save? Or save everybody. But if I only have enough life rafts for half, do I let half drown because I'm not going to put any in a lifeboat? It's a really tough issue. And we could spend all night talking about why some schools fail. He hasn't put a number on, but he seeks to reduce the investment brokers, and he basically, his plan saves $4.9 billion over 30 years. The first bill that came over from the Senate froze employees' benefit as of that date. So it had no impact on retirees. On January 1st, we'll use me as an example, my benefit would be frozen. Now, actually, under Senate Bill 1, I had no option. All legislators had to go into a new plan. However, if you were a state worker, you could opt for the existing plan, but you had to pay more. And you had what they call a risk share. So this is the way it would work. Let's say I'll use a teacher as an example. I'm a teacher in Solberry, Newark Solberry School District. I could keep my existing benefit. I pay 2.5% more. Not a bad deal because they have something called option 4. Option 4 means that when they retire, they can take their entire cash portion they paid in out with interest. So you're getting a tax deferral for money you're going to put away that's yours that you get to take out when you retire. And that's more money into the system. Or you could choose to go to the new system and not pay more. So that was basically the Senate's plan. When it came over to the House, there were a couple issues that popped up. One, what do we do about law enforcement and security guards? Prison security guards have a mandatory early retirement age. They have no choice. They hit a certain age, they're gone. They're done. So most of the House members felt that for police officer and law enforcement, we should leave them in the system. So our bill that we sent to the governor, the Senate adopted, left correction workers and state police in the current pension system. The other problem that we have to deal with, law enforcement is capped on Social Security. So in the big cities, they don't pay any Social Security at all. So they don't get Social Security. So you're a Philadelphia city police officer, you get no Social Security on retirement. In the counties, we're paying, but they're capped under federal law at 50%. So even if they were a regular worker and they earned $1,000, they would only get $500. So there are differences. Oh, I know, doesn't it sound crazy? They're capped. That's why most have side jobs. You'll see that many of them are landscapers, they do snow plowing, they do whatever they can. Also,
What's the rationale?
what's the rationale for that? It was a deal made years and years and years ago, 70 years ago. And it was a deal they made at the negotiating table, and now nobody really knows why, but everybody thinks it's stupid. So when you read, it's a segue, but it's an important pension issue. So the state has a pension problem. Municipalities have a pension problem that makes ours look cultured. Wait till that all comes out. Like City of Scranton is as close to bankruptcy as you can get. Imagine you're a law enforcement or a paid fireman and your retirement blows up. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. So, a lot of issues to deal with. So, one of the things that we have is to make the option 1 cost neutral. Here's what this means. It's really simple. Under the current system, it's assumed that the rate of return is 4%. Even if it's less, they still get 4%. I have a bill, a standalone bill, that's like $5 billion in savings, just by making it neutral, and it changes the average final salary from 3 to 5. There's an anti-spiking provision. Anti-spiking is the idea that just before you retire, you can work a lot of overtime, so you drive your pension benefits up. And then investment risk. Investment risk is this, that if the market goes down, 50% gets eaten by the state. So in other words, you project 7% return and you only get 3.5. Half gets eaten by the state, half gets eaten by the employee. On the flip side, if you project 7 and you get 10, it gets split the other way. So that's what that is. Okay. Under Senate Bill 1, $10 million savings over 30 years. This is something our school districts are begging for relief on because their numbers just keep climbing, as does the state. Okay, next slide. A lot more detail of some of the things we just talked about. Keep going. This is the total unfunded liability, $53 billion. But here's the real important thing. Part of the system is based upon number of employees working versus number of retirees. The state system is now about 1 to 1. For every stated worker, there's 1 retiree. That's bad. That's bad math. The teachers are not there yet, the teachers and their assistants. However, in 5 years, they're projected to be at 1 to 1. If we do nothing, the teacher's pension deficit grows by $8 billion. We do nothing. Now, teachers aren't happy about this. They're not happy about any changes. They don't want any changes. I get letters all the time. It's not fair to the kids. Don't give me it's not fair to the kids. It's your pension. It's not their pension. But here's what I say to them. What if you don't have a pension because it blows up? Then what? Then you're really in deep deal. Okay, so
Scott, is that $8 billion pension, is that per year?
it's $8 billion that balloons more over the top. So it's not per year, but because they get to a 1-to-1, it's just the economics. There's a book out by a guy named Ryan, and it's called Pension Crisis in America. And he basically starts with the proposition that if the pension is run properly, whether it be in the private sector or the public sector, it's a good deal. But the point he makes that I think is really good, said if that's true, what you have to do is you have to measure your liability against your assets. You have to match up, which means that every pension plan is going to have a different liability that you have to measure. So the point he makes is, what's the good of saying I return better than the Dow? I got $8 million in return. If you had $8 million of loss or $11 million of losses, you're still three behind. And so what happens in an actuarial sense, and it's true for municipal pensions too, they're not measuring their liability. They're measuring a broader liability, and so therefore you're not really putting in enough to meet that future debt, and it just snowballs. This is a side-by-side comparison of cost savings, just to show, the Senate version as non-amended on the 2 systems, then the final, and then the governor's proposal. This is a detailed breakdown, and for school board members, for municipal employees, this is the 2 systems and what the projected savings are. So, for instance, governor's proposal is $3 billion in bonds. He has, by throwing $3 billion in, he saves 7, but the cost of the money is 5.5, so it's a net at 2.3. Of course, that's assuming the market doesn't continue to go down, because that's a crapshoot too. And then he doesn't have a number for investment management fees. We don't know what the savings would be or not be. Keep going. Sorry. Okay, so this is the option for making it neutral. Just that alone is $5 billion between the 2 systems. Actually, $5.5 billion. 5-year average on retirement. You between the two systems. Anti-spiking, won't have numbers, and then investment risk share, nobody has calculated what those savings are. You can't. The market goes up and down, you don't know. Okay. This is a different way of presenting the same information as to what's in each plan. Cash balance versus, keep going. That's more detail, more detail. Okay, this is the probably fourth different way of looking at it. I like this one the best because this enables, remember we talked about the hybrid plan? There are the numbers on last year's hybrid plan. Here's a full defined PC plan for new hires. This is cash balance for new hires. You can actually go down this list and say, oh, I like that, that works. You could put a pension proposal package together with these numbers and calculate what the savings would be. So it's a great tool. I put this slide in because when we had budget talks, the governor had always talked about $3 billion versus bonding, but the House Democrat leaders were actually suggesting we should borrow more. They thought maybe we should borrow either 9 or 10 billion, a billion, to put in the pension plan. So I wanted to show what the cost of that money would be. It's significantly higher, no surprise. Borrow more money, cost more money to pay back. Okay? Okay, we're going to move to education. There's some misnomers that have been repeated in the newspaper over and over and over again. And when you have misnomers, people start believing them. I saw one today that said we're 47th in state spending on education. It's not true. It's just not true. So I thought I'd give you the details. The first misnomer I'm starting with is more. Yes, more is more. What that means is, you see these two numbers? This is when the federal government gave us a subsidy. We reduced total state spending, but total dollars to schools still went up. Here's the biggest point. We would be spending more money this year on basic education than we spent in the year. So the amount of spending, the amount of your tax dollars from the state going into education is higher than it ever has been. And obviously, you know from your real estate tax bills, the amount that you're paying into the school districts is also going up dramatically. In fact, here's an interesting fact. I don't know what the number is for New Hope Sulbury, but I can get it. I can tell, I'm sure it's similar to Council Rock. There's something called a hold harmless clause in a lot of our funding formulas. It exists in drug and alcohol. It exists in school funding, aging services, and like. What a hold harmless clause basically says is you're not going to really evaluate what your need is. We're going to assume your need always goes up. And so what we do is every year, regardless, even if you became smaller as a school district, maybe you went from 10,000 students to